guys, it's Alexis, aka The Soft Reader, and I'm here today to do my July review. For those of you who don't know, I do a review at the end of every month where I discuss all of the non-bookish things I did in the month. So the movies, the TV shows, the music I listened to, all of those kinds of things. So that's what I'm here to do today. Starting out with the movies I watched in the month of July, the first one is SpiderMan Homecoming, which is of course the new Spider-Man movie in the newest Spider-Man reboot, and this is the one that kind of ties into the Marvel universe, film universe as it exists. Spider-Man in this movie is played by Tom Holland, who originally appeared in Captain America Civil War, where he played Spider-Man. Now, I can admit that I think that this is definitely the best Spider-Man film we've gotten so far. I think it's definitely the setup to a really great Spider-Man film franchise coming out. But I found myself not loving it. I liked it. I think it's a great film, but there was something about it I just didn't love, and I can't pinpoint what exactly that is. And since I can't pinpoint it, I'm not going to waste time saying it. I'll just tell you all the things that I think the movie's got going for it. The first of which is I think Tom Holland plays a really good Spider-Man. I think he really helps bring the character to life. He's funny, but because he's playing such a younger Spider-Man, in this movie Peter Parker's only about 14, 15 years old, he really helps bring that young Spider-Man to life. You know, you really kind of do look at him and you're like, this is a kid, you know, he's dealing with things that in a lot of ways are over his head, and I think that Tom Holland and the script both do a really good job bringing that and making that like a very solid point in the story. Overall, I liked that this was a younger Spider-Man movie and that it felt authentically young. And I don't know if that's on the part of Tom Holland or if that's on the part of the script, but I never found myself questioning whether or not this was a 14 or 15-year-old Peter Parker dealing with all of these things. The humor to me was very, very on point, and a lot of the jokes felt very young, felt very fresh. And I really appreciated that. The other thing I really, really liked about this particular Spider-Man film is that it was not necessarily an origin story for Peter Parker. You know, we didn't have to see the same film where he gets bit by a spider. We didn't have to watch Uncle Ben die for the millionth time. And I really liked that. Those events have taken place in some period before the start of this film, and I loved that. I loved that we didn't have to watch the same origin story again. It kind of just takes off when he's already been Spider-Man, he's already played his role in Captain America Civil War, and so now we're just kind of watching him pick up from that point and move forward as he's trying to make a name for himself as a solo superhero. There were quite a few jokes in here that were kind of geared towards DC that I thought were pretty grand slam, pretty funny. And yeah, overall I thought it was a good movie. I didn't love it. I don't know why I didn't love it, but I still think it's a really great film. The next movie I'm going to mention is Edgar Wright's Baby Driver. I've been wanting to see Baby Driver since I first saw the preview for it. I thought it looked fantastic, and I thought it was fantastic. I loved Baby Driver. Baby Driver has all of the makings of a fantastic film. The soundtrack and the way that it plays into the story, the whole story is kind of choreographed around the soundtrack, and music plays such a big role in the film for our main character, Baby, who actually has a hearing disability, which is another thing I loved about the film. I thought the driving scenes were fantastic, and they were just so fun to watch, especially this opening sequence where you first get to see Baby drive is so good. I also want to mention that I loved the diversity in this film, and there's also a character who is black, he's in a wheelchair, and he's also deaf, which I loved, and he actually has a pretty decent part in the story that I thought was really fantastic. I thought the acting was good. I thought a lot of the characters turned out a lot different than their initial setup kind of painted them as, which I really, really liked. I thought Jamie Foxx's character was just so creepy and like kind of scary, and I think he played that role fantastic. The love interest kind of has a lot of similarities to the main character Baby's mother, which killed the romance for me a little bit. But overall I definitely still found the movie super interesting, super fascinating to look at, and especially how the whole soundtrack was choreographed to the film was really, really cool, and overall I thought it was a really, really good movie. Definitely one of my favorite movies I've seen this year. Another film I saw in July was Dunkirk, which is the newest Christopher Nolan film, which follows these French and British soldiers who are caught on the coast of France at a place called the Mole, as they were all just kind of waiting to be picked up by the British Navy and taken home to Britain. And it's about a lot of civilian boats that are commandeered to come and rescue these British soldiers. Overall, I thought Dunkirk was really good. I definitely want to give a trigger warning for the fact that this is a war film, and I've read several reviews of it that say it's very realistically about war. It's also a very loud film, so there are a lot of fighting constantly going on. It's not a lot of script, but it's a lot of sound editing for, you know, torpedoes and guns and stuff. So I want to warn about that. There are also a lot of scenes where there are men drowning, which even got to the point where I couldn't watch it, and I am not bothered by much, but even that got a little too much to me, so I do want to give a warning for that. Overall though, I thought Dunkirk was really, really good. I thought Dunkirk was one of the better war movies I've seen in a while. You know, for as loud and as jarring as the sound editing and the cinematography were, I thought both were really well done. There are three storylines kind of all simultaneously taking place towards a certain climax. One is about these boys who are soldiers and they're just trying to get off of this French coast. They're trying to get away from the fighting. It's also about this civilian boat with this man and his son's best friend as they're making their way to Dunkirk to rescue some soldiers. And it's also about a pilot who is a fighter in a fighter jet, and he is just trying to make his way to there to offer some sort of assistance. And so it's about all of these three stories and how they all intertwine and converge to a single point. And I thought the storytelling was really fantastic. I loved the storytelling. The only critique I have about Dunkirk, and it's a really small critique, is that there are a couple of scenes, mostly in the sky storyline where you're following a spider jet pilot, where you can tell, because they didn't want to use any CGI for the film, that it's modern. So there are many times where it shows like the skyline of this beach, and you can tell it's a modern skyline. There are modern buildings in the background, which for me was really jarring, and it really, like, that was the only thing I could focus on, because the story is supposed to be taking place in the 1940s during World War II. There's a scene where you can see cranes in the background, and they're modern cranes for like a shipyard. And they're very obviously modern. That's my one critique, and I admire them wanting to do a no CGI story. But also, like, that was just so, like, in my face when those scenes would happen that it was the only thing I could focus on. So, like, while I commend them for wanting to do a no CGI story, I think those particular elements just, ooh, we're not good. I didn't like that at all. Next, moving on to TV shows. The first TV show I'm going to mention is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Is a show I've never seen before, but I've always wanted to watch, and so this month I watched the entire first season, and I have to admit, I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine now. I'm currently making my way through the second season, and I've just really enjoyed it. I think that the characters in this show, considering it's a sitcom about a police unit, I think the characters are all pretty well developed, and I think they're all really funny. I don't think there's a single moment where I can say, you know, I don't wish this character had been included because I don't think they're funny enough. I genuinely think everybody really commits to their role, and the roles all bring something to, like, the cast, which is what makes a comedy so funny. A lot of the jokes are really well written, they're really well set up, and I think that they're delivered really well as well. Definitely my favorite character in Brooklyn Nine-Nine is probably Captain Holt, because I think Andre Braugher does such a great job in that role. So I've been making my way through the second season. I'm hoping to catch up in the next couple of months, but if you want just a really, really funny comedy, I definitely recommend Brooklyn Nine-Nine because I think it's really funny. The next TV show I'm going to mention is Silicon Valley, which is an HBO show that follows these group of guys who are in a startup company, and so it's basically about them. One of the guys, Richard, has an idea for a compression service, and he decides to make it his own company, and it's about him and his friends kind of all going in together to make this a top company. Funny story, there are 4 seasons of Silicon Valley currently out. I've seen the 4th season, that's actually my introduction to the show. Over the past couple of months, I've seen bits and pieces of the 4th season while I was hanging out with some of my coworkers because they all watch it. And so finally I decided I wanted to watch the show from the get-go. So in the month of July, I watched the first 2 seasons of Silicon Valley. And it's a comedy. It is on HBO, so some of the jokes tend to be, you know, a lot more mature. But overall, I think Silicon Valley is hilarious. I think that the acting in it is kind of what brings so much of the humor to life. I think TJ Miller does a great job at his character. There are 2 characters, Jared and Guilfoyle, and unfortunately I don't remember the actors' names for those, who are hysterical, and it's a lot about the way they deliver their lines that are just so perfect. A lot of the humor too is in watching the guy who plays the main character, Richard, watching that character just make things so much worse, and he just constantly goes in and messes things up, and so you're frustrated, but it's also hysterical. Moving on to the anime I watched in the month of July. The only one I've watched is a leftover from June, and that was Boku no Hero Academia in July. I completely have caught up on the anime, and so now I'm watching it, you know, weekly when the new episodes come out. So I just wanted to say that I've completely caught up on the anime, and actually this month I committed and caught up on the manga as well. So I'm completely caught up on Boku no Hero Academia. That's happened. I spent a lot of time this month catching up on that. And I know last month I had said that I liked it, but that I wouldn't necessarily call it a fave. But as I've read more of the actual manga and as I've gotten much deeper into the story, I will have to admit I think it's a really stellar story, and I found myself falling in love with the story a lot more, especially as kind of things have happened. So I just wanted to give an update on that I have completely caught up on the anime for that, and as well as the manga. So yeah, I really like Boku no Hero Academia now. The last thing I'm going to mention is the music I listened to, and really the main thing I listened to this month was the new Ed Sheeran CD, which is Divide. This is actually the deluxe edition. So I started listening to this on Spotify, and I actually liked it so much I went and bought my own copy so I could listen to it in my car. Yes, I really like this. I think as a whole, it's probably the best Ed Sheeran CD because I think per song, this song has more songs that I've enjoyed than any other previous Ed Sheeran song. I think there's only one song on here that I don't really like, which is Perfect. I don't really like that song. It's kind of generic to me. I feel like anybody could have written that song and it would have been the same song. So I don't really like Perfect, but a lot of the other songs on this CD I think are really good. My favorites are Happier. I just think Happier is a really beautifully written song, and I think Ed Sheeran does a really good job of portraying that particular emotion. Nancy Mulligan, which is a song from the deluxe edition, which is the song of like how his grandparents met and fell in love, and I just think that song is a joy, but it's also like really cute because it's like about his grandparents, and I think that's like adorable. And it also has like an Irish folk kind of beat to it that I really, really enjoy. And Dive. I also think Dive is just an all-around really good song. I think the lyrics are fantastic. I think Ed Sheeran's performance on that song is really beautiful, and I think that the mood and the feeling of the song are also just perfectly present throughout the entire thing, and so I think Dive is a work of art. So yeah, so I pretty much have been listening to this CD non-stop throughout the entire month of July, and I really like it a lot. Alright, so you guys should let me know down below if you saw any of these things, or if you want to talk to me about anything, or if you just want to tell me what you watched in the month of July. I'd love to hear it, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye!